I never thought much about roofs before. They were just something over your head, keeping the rain out, something you noticed when shingles fell off, or when you heard footsteps up there during repairs. But that changed the day I met Finn. I was 26, working from home as a graphic designer in this old craftsman house I'd bought in Portland, the kind with good bones, but 1,000 little problems that kept announcing themselves at the worst possible times. The roof started leaking during a March storm, water dripping right onto my desk, ruining a client presentation I'd spent 3 days perfecting. I called 5 roofing companies before I found one that could come out the same week. Finn showed up on a Wednesday morning in a faded grey t-shirt and work jeans that had seen better days, his truck rumbling up my driveway with a logo that read Morrison Roofing in chipped paint. I watched from the window as he stepped out, this tall guy with sandy brown hair and shoulders that suggested he spent his days doing actual physical work, not hunched over a computer like me. He had an easy way of moving, confident but not cocky, and when he knocked on my door and I opened it, his smile was the kind that made you feel like you'd known each other for years instead of seconds. "I'm Adrian," I said, shaking his hand. His grip was firm, his palm calloused, in a way mine would never be. "Finn," he replied. His voice was deeper than I expected, warm like whiskey. "Let's take a look at what we're dealing with." I led him inside to where the leak had been, pointing up at the water-stained ceiling. He tilted his head back, studying it with this focused intensity, and I found myself studying him instead. The line of his jaw, the way his throat moved when he swallowed, the small scar above his left eyebrow that I immediately wanted to know the story behind. He caught me looking, and I felt heat rush to my face, quickly glancing away. "I'll need to get up on the roof to see the real damage," he said. "Mind if I go up through your attic access?" I nodded, leading him to the hallway where the pull-down ladder was. He reached up easily, his shirt riding up just enough that I saw a sliver of tanned skin above his belt, and I forced myself to look anywhere else, feeling like a teenager with a stupid crush. What was wrong with me? I'd dated guys before, had a boyfriend through most of college, but this immediate attraction felt different, more visceral, catching me completely off guard. He climbed up into the attic and I heard him moving around above me, footsteps crossing from one side to the other. Then his voice called down, asking if I wanted to come up and see what he was looking at. I hesitated. Heights weren't exactly my thing. I could handle a ladder, but something about attics and roofs made my stomach twist. Still, I climbed up, emerging into the dusty darkness where Finn stood near a shaft of light coming through a damaged section of the roof. "See here," he said, gesturing to where water had clearly been coming in, rotting the wood around it. "This whole section needs to be replaced. Probably 6 or 7 sheets of plywood, new underlayment, new shingles." He looked at me and must have seen something in my face because his expression softened. "Hey, you okay? You look a little pale." "I'm fine," I lied, "just not great with heights." He nodded, understanding, and started moving toward the opening, but I followed him, determined not to look weak in front of this guy I'd literally just met and had no reason to impress. He climbed out onto the roof and turned back, offering his hand. "Come on," he said. "I'll keep you steady." His hand closed around mine and suddenly I was out on the roof, the world spreading out below us, my neighbourhood visible in a way I'd never seen it before. My heart was hammering, and I wasn't sure if it was the height or the fact that Finn hadn't let go of my hand yet. "You're doing great," he said quietly, and his thumb brushed across my knuckles in what might have been an accident but felt intentional. "Look at me, not down." I looked at him, and something passed between us. Something electric and terrifying and impossible to ignore. His eyes were hazel, I noticed, green and gold and brown all mixed together, and they were looking at me with an intensity that made it hard to breathe. Then he smiled, breaking the moment, and gestured at the damaged section of roof. "This is what needs fixing," he said. All business again. But his voice had changed slightly, gone a little rougher around the edges. We climbed back down and he wrote up an estimate in my kitchen, sitting at my table with his paperwork spread out, and I made coffee because I didn't want him to leave yet, which was insane. I'd known him for 40 minutes, but there was something about him that made me want to know more, to understand the person behind the easy smile and capable hands. He took his coffee black and thanked me, and we talked about the roof, about timelines and materials and costs. But underneath that we were having another conversation entirely, The kind that happens in glances and pauses and the way someone leans toward you without realizing it. He could start in 3 days, he said, weather permitting. I told him that was perfect, and he stood to leave, gathering his papers. I walked him to the door and we stood there for a moment too long, neither of us quite ready to say goodbye. See you Friday, he said finally, and I watched him walk back to his truck, watched him drive away, and felt this strange sense of loss, like something important had just slipped through my fingers. The next 3 days crawled by. I tried to work but found myself distracted, thinking about Finn in ways I probably shouldn't have been. I didn't even know if he was gay, if that moment on the roof had meant anything, or if I was reading into something that wasn't there. I'd learned the hard way not to assume, not to project my hopes onto straight guys who were just being friendly. But something about the way he'd looked at me, the way his thumb had brushed my knuckles, made me think maybe, possibly, I wasn't imagining things. Friday morning arrived grey and drizzly, and I woke up to the sound of his truck in my driveway. I looked out to see him unloading materials, moving with that same easy confidence, and my stomach did a stupid flip. I made coffee and brought 2 cups outside, finding him staring up at the roof with his hands on his hips. "Brought you this," I said, offering a cup. He turned and his whole face lit up when he saw me, and I knew I wasn't imagining things, not entirely. "You're a lifesaver," he said, taking the coffee. His fingers brushed mine and lingered just a second longer than necessary. "Listen," he continued. "I've got a crew coming to help with the heavy work, but they won't be here for another hour. Want to keep me company while I get set up?" I should have said no. I had work to do, deadlines approaching, but instead I said sure and followed him around to the side of the house where he was setting up his ladder. We talked while he worked, easy conversation that felt natural, effortless. I learned he was 28, had been roofing since he was 18, took over his dad's business when his father retired. He asked about my work and actually seemed interested in the answer, asked questions about design and clients and what I loved about it. His crew showed up, 2 guys in their 40s who clearly knew what they were doing, and I went back inside to work. But I found myself getting up every 20 minutes to check on the progress, telling myself I was just curious about the repairs, but knowing I was really just looking for glimpses of Finn. At lunch, I ordered pizza for all of them, bringing it out to where they were taking a break, and Finn's eyes met mine with this look of surprised gratitude that made my chest feel tight. "You didn't have to do that," he said, but I could tell he was pleased. The crew ate and headed back up, but Finn stayed down for a few extra minutes, sitting on my back steps with me, close enough that our shoulders almost touched. "This is a good place you've got here," he said, looking around at my overgrown garden and the fence I'd been meaning to fix. "It's got potential." "Thanks," I said. "It's a work in progress. Kind of like me. I don't know why I said that last part. It just slipped out, too honest, too revealing." But Finn turned to look at me and his expression was soft, understanding. "Aren't we all?" he said quietly, and something in his tone made me brave. "Can I ask you something?" I started, but one of his crew called down from the roof and the moment shattered. He stood, gave me this apologetic look and headed back to work. I went inside feeling frustrated, like I'd almost said something important but lost my chance. The work took 3 days. 3 days of Finn and his crew on my roof, 3 days of me finding excuses to be outside, bringing water and snacks, asking questions about the progress. 3 days of moments that felt charged with possibility, conversations that went deeper than they should have between a homeowner and his roofer. I learned he'd been in a serious relationship that ended badly 2 years ago, that he loved hiking and craft beer and old movies. He learned I was terrible at cooking, but great at ordering takeout, that I'd moved to Portland from California to start fresh after my own breakup, that I was still figuring out what I wanted from life. On the 3rd day, late afternoon, the job was done. His crew packed up and left, but Finn stayed behind to walk me through everything they'd done, showing me the new shingles and explaining about warranties and maintenance. We ended up on the roof again, him insisting I needed to see the quality of the work, me not admitting that heights still terrified me, but wanting to be up there with him anyway. The view was better this time. The rain had cleared and the sun was breaking through clouds, casting everything in golden light. Portland spread out below us, the city I'd chosen for my fresh start, and Finn stood beside me, close enough that I could feel the heat coming off his skin. "You did good," he said, and I realized he wasn't talking about the roof. Coming up here even though it scares you, that takes guts. I looked at him and he was already looking at me, and this time neither of us looked away. "I have to tell you something," I said, my heart pounding so hard I was sure he could hear it. "I've been trying to figure out how to say this for 3 days, and I'm just going to say it. I like you more than I should like my roofer, and maybe I'm completely misreading this, and if I am, I apologize, but I think maybe you feel it too." The silence that followed felt eternal. Then Finn smiled, this slow, genuine smile that transformed his whole face. "I thought I was going crazy," he said. "I never do this. I never fall for clients. But from the moment you opened your door, I couldn't stop thinking about you." He reached out, his hand cupping my jaw, his thumb brushing my cheekbone. "I'm terrified I'm going to mess this up," he continued. "My last relationship ended because he said I worked too much, cared more about the business than him. Maybe he was right. But when I'm with you, I don't want to be anywhere else." "Then don't be," I said, and kissed him. It was soft at first, tentative, both of us testing this new territory, but then his arms came around me and I pressed closer, and it deepened into something that made my knees weak. We were on a roof, visible to anyone who cared to look, and I didn't care at all. His mouth was warm and he tasted like coffee and possibility, and when we finally broke apart, we were both breathing hard, foreheads pressed together, smiling like idiots. "This is crazy," he said. "I barely know you, but I want to. I want to know everything. What you're like first thing in the morning, what makes you laugh, what you dream about. I want to take you hiking and show you my favourite spots. I want to cook you dinner, even though you said you're terrible at it and I'm not much better. I want to see where this goes." "Me too," I said. "All of that." "Yes." We climbed down from the roof, his hand steadying me on the ladder, and ended up in my kitchen making plans. Dinner tomorrow night, his choice of restaurant. A hike on Sunday if the weather held. Coffee dates and movie nights and all the small intimacies of getting to know someone new. He didn't leave until after dark, and when he kissed me goodbye at my door, it felt like a promise of more to come. The next few weeks were a blur of falling. That's what it felt like, falling, and for someone afraid of heights it should have been terrifying, but with Finn it felt like flying instead. He took me to his favourite Thai place, and we talked until they were stacking chairs around us. We hiked to waterfalls and he held my hand on the trails, patient when I needed to stop and catch my breath, pointing out birds and plants like he was sharing secrets. I brought him to art galleries and he looked at paintings with the same focused intensity he'd given my roof, asking questions and actually listening to the answers. We learned each other slowly. I discovered he was a morning person while I was decidedly not, that he sang off key in the shower, that he had a terrible habit of leaving cabinet doors open. He learned I got obsessive about projects and forgot to eat, that I needed silence to work but craved noise in the evenings, that I had nightmares sometimes about my ex and woke up disoriented and anxious. He was patient with all of it, pulling me close in the dark, whispering that he was there, that I was safe. The first time he stayed over, about a month in, we were watching a movie on my couch and I fell asleep against his shoulder. I woke up hours later to find him still there, the TV off, his arm around me, his breathing slow and even. I shifted and he stirred, looking down at me with sleepy eyes. "Sorry," I murmured. "Didn't mean to trap you here." He kissed my forehead and said he couldn't think of anywhere else he'd rather be, and something in my chest cracked open at that, some last defense I'd been holding on to. We made love for the first time that night, slow and tender and perfect in all the ways first times usually aren't. He was gentle, checking in with me, making sure I was okay, and when it was over we lay tangled together, my head on his chest, his fingers tracing patterns on my back. "I could fall in love with you," I said into the darkness, brave because I couldn't see his face. "I think I already am." His hand stilled for a moment, then continued its gentle movement. "Good," he said quietly, "because I'm already there. I fell in love with you on your roof when you were terrified but came up anyway because I asked you to. I fell in love with your determination and your kindness, and the way you look at me like I'm something precious." I lifted my head to look at him, and his eyes were serious, vulnerable in a way I hadn't seen before. "I've been scared to say it," he continued. "Scared to move too fast, scared to mess this up. But I love you, Adrian. I love you, and I want to build something with you, something that lasts." I kissed him then, tasting salt and realizing I was crying, happy tears that I couldn't hold back. "I love you too," I said. "So much it terrifies me." He held me tighter and said, being terrified was okay, that we'd be terrified together, and somehow that made it better. The months that followed weren't perfect. We had fights about stupid things, about whose turn it was to do dishes, about me working too late and him taking too many jobs. We had moments of doubt, old wounds resurfacing, fears that maybe we were moving too fast, maybe this wouldn't last. But we worked through it, learning how to communicate, how to give each other space while still staying connected. He met my friends and charmed them all, showing up to game nights with beer and bad jokes. I met his family, his mum hugging me like I was already part of them, his dad asking about my work with genuine interest. 6 months in, we were lying in bed on a Sunday morning, lazy and comfortable, when he said he'd been thinking about selling his apartment and finding a new place. Somewhere with better light, he said. Maybe a yard. I was quiet for a moment, then said, "Or you could move in here. We're here most of the time anyway." His head turned sharply to look at me. "Are you serious?" he asked. I nodded, suddenly nervous. "If you want to, no pressure." "But yeah, I'd like that. I'd like to wake up with you every morning, build a life together in this house we've both been fixing up." He kissed me breathless and said yes, said he'd been hoping I'd ask but hadn't wanted to push. We spent the rest of the day planning, talking about how we'd rearrange furniture, where his stuff would go, what we'd do with the spare bedroom. He moved in 3 weeks later, and it was chaotic and perfect, boxes everywhere, both of us tripping over each other, but it felt right in a way nothing else ever had. Living together showed me new sides of him. His patience when I was stressed about work, bringing me tea and rubbing my shoulders. His playfulness, chasing me through the house over some stupid joke. His steadiness, the way he anchored me when anxiety tried to pull me under. I learned he talked to himself while working on projects, that he cried at sad movies but tried to hide it, that he left me little notes around the house just to make me smile. We built routines together, Saturday morning farmers market trips, Sunday hikes when weather allowed, weeknight dinners where we'd cook together and talk about our days. We hosted friends and game nights and barbecues in our backyard. We adopted a cat from the shelter, a grumpy orange tabby that Finn named Shingle, and who slept between us every night. We planted a garden and watched things grow, tending to tomatoes and herbs with the same care we tended to each other. A year after we met, Finn woke me up early on a Wednesday morning, the anniversary of the day he'd first showed up to fix my roof. "Come on," he said, pulling me out of bed. "I have something to show you." I followed him, still half asleep, confused when he led me outside and pointed to the ladder leaning against the house. "We're going up," he said. "Trust me." I hesitated. Heights still not my favourite thing, but I trusted him completely now. We climbed up to the roof in the early morning light, the city still quiet around us, and he led me to the spot where we'd first almost kissed. He turned to me and took both my hands. "A year ago, I came here to fix your roof," he said. "I had no idea I was going to meet the love of my life. You've changed everything for me, Adrian. You've made me happier than I knew I could be. You've taught me that love doesn't have to be complicated, that it can be simple and steady and true. And I want to spend the rest of my life proving to you every day how much you mean to me." He let go of one of my hands and reached into his pocket, pulling out a small box. "I'm asking you here, where it all started, where you trusted me to keep you steady even though you were terrified. Will you marry me? Will you let me love you for the rest of our lives?" I couldn't speak for a moment, tears streaming down my face, my heart so full it hurt. "Yes," I finally managed. "Yes. Absolutely yes." He slipped the ring on my finger and kissed me as the sun broke over the horizon, bathing us in golden light, and I thought about how a year ago I'd been standing in this same spot, terrified of the height and the intensity of what I was feeling for this man I barely knew, and now here we were, engaged and in love and building a life together, and I wasn't afraid anymore. With Finn, I'd learned that falling could be the most beautiful thing in the world, as long as you had someone to catch you. Someone to steady you when you looked down and saw how far you'd come and how much further you still had to go together. We sat on that roof for a long time, watching the city wake up below us, planning our future, dreaming our dreams, and when we finally climbed down, his hand steadying me on the ladder just like that first day, I knew that whatever came next, we'd face it together. He'd steadied me when I looked down, and I'd spend the rest of my life doing the same for him, building something lasting and true, one day at a time.